In this part of the series, we'll be building the rest of our scene and rendering our final animation. Now that we have our character in our scene with the clothing applied, we can start off with adding in a pair of shoes. We can find a model online for free and then import it into our scene. It's easier to work with one shoe at a time, so we can delete the other shoe for now. Then we can try to fit the shoe roughly on the character. Next, we can select the shoe and then our rig and go into pose mode. Now we can select the main foot bone and parent our shoe to that bone. If we play the animation, the shoe will now move with the foot bone. At this point, parts of the feet might be clipping to the shoe. We can easily fix this by going into sculpt mode, and then with the smooth brush selected, we can smooth out the surfaces that are clipping. Now to add in the other shoe, we can simply add a mirror modifier to it and then separate it into its own object, and then follow the same steps we parent it to the rig. And the process is pretty much the same for adding other accessories to our character as well. Next, we can build out the rest of our scene. For our simple walk animation, I wanted to create a simple pathway with glowing rings. We can create a pathway using a cube and then extend it across our scene. For the rings, we can add a torus to the scene and then adjust the settings till we get the look we like. Now to add the rings across our path, we can use the array modifier and then change the offset in the direction of our path. Then we can change the count number till it spreads across our whole path. Next, let's add a camera to our scene and place it so it faces our character. Now going into camera view, we can start to adjust the aspect ratio and resolution of our camera. Going into render mode, we can start to adjust the lighting of our scene and add in our materials. First, we want to uncheck the transparent option because we want to render a background for the scene. Then in the world properties, we can change our background to an RGB color and change the color to a very dark blue. Now we can start adding in materials for our pathway. To make the rings light up, we can add a new material and then change the surface to emission. Then we can select the color and change the strength till we're satisfied with how it looks. Next, we can add a material for the pathway as well and give it a color we like. We can also reduce the roughness to reflect the lights. If we render the scene, you'll notice that our lights look a little dull. To make the lights a little bit more dramatic, we can add a little glare to them. To do this, we can go into the compositing tab, and here you want to make sure that the use nodes is checked. Then we can add in a new glare filter and change it to fog. Now if we render our scene, our lighting will look a lot more exciting. Lastly, we want to animate our character so it actually looks like it's moving forward. To keep a clean workflow, the best approach for doing this is to use an empty object. We can add an empty to the scene and then parent the rig, the clothing, and the camera to it. Now if we move the empty, it will move our character, the clothing, and the camera all together. Since the first 25 frames of the animation is our character going from a pose to our walk animation, we can set the start frame to 25. Then we can add an initial keyframe for our empty. Now we can move to the last frame and move our empty by 15 meters or so, and add a keyframe there as well. Now if we play the animation, our character will move across our path. Now by default, our animation will have an interpolation of ease in and ease out, which isn't really what we want. We can change this by opening up the graph editor and then changing the interpolation to linear. Before being able to render, we first need to set an output directory where our animation will get saved. We could change the file format to FFmpeg and then change the encoding to MPEG-4. For animations like these, I typically render 256 samples. If you don't have a good graphics card and don't want to wait your entire life for your render to complete, I suggest rendering 16 samples or so. I find that this still gives you a pretty decent result. Also make sure to have denoise checked as well, because it'll result in a much cleaner final output. Now finally we can render our animation. And that is the end of this series. I really hope you enjoyed it. I have linked all the previous videos of this series in the description below. Finally, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.